Okay, this is week 22 of the Forest of Life Venus calendar, and we're going to accelerate a little bit today. Let's start by talking about what today signifies in the overall course. So today is the first day of the third part of the course. And if you're taking the course, then you have followed with me every week, engaging in meditations, discussions, practices, and there's a considerable amount of momentum has been built in this process. And we find ourselves here having just crossed the cusp of the center of the tarot. Even though it's 2/3 of the way through the course, remember that the course breaks itself into dealing with the Sephiroth, which are the minor arcana, and the paths of the Tree of Life, which are the major arcana. And so we're really right in the center of the paths. We've just crossed over that threshold. And if you did the exercise involving the labyrinth, you will have taken a journey to the very center of the labyrinth. This here says Taro Troa Rota Tora, which very roughly could indicate the saying, the tarot is the gate of the wheel of the law. Which is to say that it is just a doorway. It's not. It is the threshold that we cross in order to understand the wheel of the law. What is the wheel of the law? Of course, Torah is the law, but it's not a law in the sense of a material law, but rather a kind of a code, a dynamic, a dynamic code. Which we could compare to the Dharma, or the Logos for that matter. So it's fair to say that the tarot is a gate of the wheel of the Logos. And what is Logos? Logos is meaning. Logos is measure. Logos is word. And of course, in the Kabbalistic tradition, the power of words is so strong that they can create universes. And for those of you with the interest, I highly recommend reading the source text of Kabbalah and Kabbalistic tarot, the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, in which it's very clear how the letters create a universe. So, boy howdy, do we have a lot to cover in this video. So I want to talk about the wheel first and foremost, as a modality of structuring thought. So it's fair to say that within the tarot tradition, within the esoteric tradition, there are two or perhaps three fundamental modalities of the structuration of thought. One is the axis, the tree. In Kabbalistic tradition, this is called the Yosher. So the tree of life is an example. And then there is the wheel, or the concentric circle. And the labyrinth is an example of this. So the tree and the wheel, the axis and the ring. And it shouldn't take that much imagination to realize that this is clearly a sexual symbol. So you have an opening and a rod which passes through the opening. A vertical and a horizontal scheme of evaluation. And what's happening in this practice is that we are yoking the vertical and the horizontal schema to produce a kind of synthesis that allows us to assemble energies and deploy them in different shapes and different forms, one of which is the crystalline form. And that would really be the third modality, the crystalline. So the axis and, or the tree and the wheel and the diamond as three symbols for how these paths, these tarot energies can be assembled. And what's interesting is they can be assembled into one and then the other successfully or successively or simultaneously. Now, can we just think these kinds of thoughts and say, oh, now it's a crystal, now it's a wheel? Does this make a difference, or do we have to do something else in order for this to have magical effects? And I'm going to say that, yeah, we absolutely do. There's theory, there's talk, and then there's experience and practice. And the difference is it's very easy to talk in theory about different models and moving them this way and that way and so on. But practice is a slower and longer journey. And it hosts itself on theory, but it is in no way dispensable. It carries theory, if you will, beyond itself. And really, there is no theory that doesn't, there is no fertile theory that doesn't come out of or be trued by or tempered by practice. What happens in practice with the cards? We read them, we think about them, we tell different stories, we solve problems with them. We load each card and each Hebrew letter, if you will, with significant meaning, energy, emotional, spiritual energy. And once this has been accomplished, then the mobilization of these energies in different forms becomes a very, very significant psychological resource, if you will. And so the wheel tells us about how we can mobilize the tarot energies around a circle with a kind of centrifugal quality to it, centrifugal quality to the energies. We're going to talk more about how this is accomplished, but I want to take a number of detours, as I'm sure you've been expecting. Let's talk about different kinds of wheels. There's wheels on a car, there's wheels in the heavens. So we think of the heavens as a 360-degree circle. And we divide that usually into 12 equal segments, which is the tropical zodiac. You should know that the sidereal zodiac and the tropical zodiac are not the same thing. The signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces are not positioned in front of the constellations by those names, nor are the constellations of those names of even in equal sizes. Pisces incredibly long, Aries is incredibly short. The zodiac from a star point of view, the zodiac wheel from a stellar point of view, would be very uneven. It would be a big section, a little section, a middle section, and it would not look like the tropical zodiac does, which is 30-degree segments, 12 of them, and the signs of the zodiac. So really, modern astrology maps onto geometry, maps the planets onto the circle, not onto the heavens, but onto the circle, which actually suggests that there's a kind of encasement around the world, around the solar system. In that, unlike, say, Indian astrology, which is sidereal, typical Western astrology is almost within this kind of a Dyson sphere, really. You could almost call it a kind of a semiotic Dyson sphere. And that's a whole other area to explore. But there's an example of wheel. The wheel of the heavens. The color wheel, where we counterpose different colors: green and red, blue and orange, purple and yellow. The modern color theory, which, if you've done any work with Golden Dawn material, let's say Ithel Cajon, you know that that wheel is a major player in the psychology of how modern ceremonial magic is structured, because it's very much about what's called flashing colors, which is taking colors that are opposite one another on the color wheel. So there's an example of an arrangement of energies in a wheel. And I could go on and on and on. But although we're coming full circle, if you will, I want to keep focused, at least to the degree that we can cover some material that I wish to share with you. So we talked about the wheel of the zodiac, the wheel of the year, of course, which is the modern pagan set of 8 holidays. The holidays, I believe, go back way earlier than that. Someone with more direct research experience than that can say. But I know Ronald Hutton wrote a book on it called Stations of the Sun, and I have not read that book yet, but it looks very, very, very good and very, very, very solid. So that's where I intend to go to study the wheel of the pagan year, with the 8 fire festivals that structure it. There are, of course, 4 key points. If you imagine the sun at the center, and you've got a big circle, and the Earth is going. Actually, the Earth is going around like this, but it's tilted. So it's at a 23.5 degree tilt. So when it passes this way, there's an equinox. When it passes over here, and one side is closer to the sun than the other, there's a solstice. And when it's over here, it's another equinox and a solstice and an equinox, and so on. The reason I just say a solstice rather than the winter solstice and the fall solstice is because in the northern hemisphere, this is summer. The southern hemisphere, it's winter. And this is now in the northern hemisphere, the southern hemisphere, summer. And so for the northern hemisphere, this position here is for the northern hemisphere, this is the spring equinox, but for the southern hemisphere, it's the fall equinox. So these things counterchange in the hemispheres because of the axial tilt. There's a famous joke, of course, that goes around every year when Christmas time comes up and says, axial tilt is the reason for the season. And of course, that is the case because the seasons are cued by these 4 positions, and then the other 4 positions are in the middle of fall, winter, summer, and spring. So Beltane, which is in early May, is mid-spring festival, and midsummer, and so on. So that's the wheel of the year. So the wheel of the year and the wheel of the heavens are obviously interconnected. We have this idea of the wheel of the law. We have this idea of wheels of time. The Maya had, of course, they had invented the wheel, but they didn't use it for transportation at all. They used it entirely for doing these interlocking calendars, of which I believe there's a really nice example in this book, Quadrivium. These little books are very nice. They're may not be in here, but they're gorgeous. There's a whole series of them, Quadrivium, Trivium, Scientia, and they're filled with useful information and scientific. So they really do fit in with the ethos of meta magic, which incorporates the modalities of spirituality, but also engages with the robustness of modern science. With a wheel, you have this concept of centrifugal force, a force being cast out into the outer ring. And there's also a concept of centripetal force. But I mean, if you're spinning a wheel, and imagine you've got a marble in that wheel, you spin it, it's going to, regardless of whether you spin it clockwise or anti-clockwise, Diacetyl or Withershins, it will end up clinging to the rim because it's a centrifuge. A centripetal force would be to draw it in. We, in some ways, are seeking to run counter to the centrifugal force of the wheel. So let's talk about the symbol of the Wheel of Fortune, which symbolizes life. It symbolizes eternal return. It symbolizes all the things that wheels symbolize. This circular array of dynamic returning energy. And it would seem that the further out on its rim we are, the greater the kind of ups and downs of our experience we end up undergoing. What do I mean by that? I want to tie this in a little bit more to the Buddhist Wheel of Life. And we talked about the Buddhist Wheel of Life on Path of Death. I have this book here, which is rather lovely. It's got this classic print of the Wheel of Death. Of course, the hells are in the lower end and the heavens are in the higher end. So you can imagine this has this kind of general energy of up is good and down is bad, right? Up, that is a facile characterization of it. But it does have some, at least psychological truth. And I find that idea of the Wheel of Life, and if you want to know more about that, I would say rewatch the week. I guess it was week 19 or some such. It was death at any rate, and rewatch that, and in which I talked quite extensively about that wheel. But here's a wheel from the Visconti Sforza deck, and this is, I will note, earlier than most tarots, and I find that many of the symbolisms that appear in these early tarots ended up kind of being altered or changed or phased out in the later decks, and some of those symbols are very, very, very interesting. In this case, we have the wheel, but you have 5 characters. You have a character at the top, and there's a Latin motto which you can't read because it was embossed in the gold, but it says I reign, and then this guy, I have reigned, this guy, I am reigned over, and then I will reign. So these are the mentalities of beings on the outer rim, beings who have in many ways been carried, compelled by the centrifugal force of the spinning of the wheel into this kind of eternal dance of domination and dominated, striving for power and then having it and then losing it and then being destitute and striving, and you can see how this is very, very, very similar, particularly to the figures, and I apologize for it, but if you see the figures in the very center of this wheel, I wonder if I can get some better images inside this. Right in the center of the wheel, you should be able to find this actually in, with a Google search. Okay, here's a better picture of it. Right, these are people climbing up on the one hand and being pulled down on the other. Very common iconography in this is like the tree of life. There's not a lot of variance that I've seen. It's usually this same set of images, 12 links of interdependent co-origination on the outside, the 6 worlds, and then the rising and falling, and then finally at the very center, 3 forces driving the wheel. A pig, a snake, and a rooster, representing greed, delusion, and hatred. And so this is the wheel of, I'll say, indeliberate returning, the wheel of sort of samsara, being compelled to return. And I think we see something very similar here. Although the wheel itself appears to be, although it could be 6-spoked. Yeah, it could be a 6-spoked wheel on the back, which would be very similar to this. And there's a person at the top is sitting on a hexagon. The person below, of course, is aged. There is so much overlap between this card and this Buddhist symbol that it raises the perennial questions about what was really going on with that Silk Road. So the Silk Road connected, China and Europe, and you don't even have to imagine people. This idea, it couldn't have gotten that far. There wasn't much communication. There didn't have to be communication between, say, China and Portugal. All there had to be was communication between, China and Mongolia and Tibet and Afghanistan and Iraq and my geography, like the stands and so forth, and of course Istanbul. And so actually there just had to be these little links. It didn't have to be implicating a big link for ideas to propagate. And I think this wheel of life shows striking similarities to the Buddhist concept, which of course is going to be related to the Indians. So I am one of those people who suspects more communication between Asia and Europe in the ancient world than we think. So this is a card that seems to me to suggest that. And yet, in more contemporary cards, this kind of disappears. Before I go there, I just want to point out we have this figure in the center of Fortune. And Fortune is blind, and Fortune's very heart is at the access point of this wheel. And that's the thing to think about, is if we are compelled to strive and return and rise and fall continuously, then where is freedom? And freedom would appear to be at the center of the wheel. And so here we have a suggestion that there could be a centripetal movement, again suggesting the entropy-negentropy polarity that I brought up before. Is that if there is a spiritual centripetality, centripetal vector, then it would be towards the hub of the wheel itself. And even Crowley in 777, or I believe maybe the Book of Thoth, says, attaineth thou the axle. And this is really the message of the Wheel of Fortune. If you get the Wheel of Fortune to spread, you can say, okay, good luck, good luck. But really what it means is a turn of the wheel. So if you're up, you're going down. If you're down, you're going up. It's a massive change. And so what we, as wielders of the tarot, as magi, wish to do is to be in the center of it, to be connected to the axis around which this spins. So in other words, to not be chasing after success and running from failure, but to be holding this inner trajectory, this axis mundi, this connection that we have to everything, and allowing the vagaries of life to rise and fall, and in doing so, going from this to that. And as we spiral in towards the center and we finally attain something like this focal axial equipoise, we're drawing on energy that we've seen before, right? We're drawing on very much on the energy of the balance, because we're finding the balance. We're finding a sweet spot at the center of the storm, if you will, in which to abide. And it's interesting that in the Wheel of Fortune, usually in the more modern versions, let's have a look here, we've got 3 key forces driving the wheel. Again, still quite similar to the Visconti Sforza in some respects, but because of course you have this idea of the person seated at the top, or the Sphinx rather. You have this similar motion, but there are 4 characters, but they are the tetramorph, so the lion, the eagle, the man, and the bull. So these are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, and because they're reading books, they are the four Gospels, right? 4 apostles: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Just to point out how this has come to really emphasize the 3 rather than the 4. So this one has a very kind of a 4-fold nature, and this one has a very 3-fold nature. And now we definitely have an 8-spoked wheel. Around it, it says Torah or Tarot, depending on which way you read it. So law and wheel, or law and tarot, and rota would be wheel. And then, of course, the element of spirit in the center, and the tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He, around the center of the wheel. This one I did many years ago, and it's quite simple, but it has a kind of a swastika formation here, or like, basically what is it called, the flip-flop cross, the mobile cross. It's essentially a cross in motion. I want to be a bit frugal with these cards as we go through, because man, it's going to talk a lot about a lot of stuff. This is a nice one. This is a classic image. This one has a crank, and I know that the idea of a crank on the wheel has come up with I believe that was, I think I first saw that in the Marseilles. So adding the crank to the wheel. Wheel suggests a span of time, a year, a cycle. Sometimes if a wheel shows up in someone's spread, it's their birthday. Obviously, the wheel makes us think of the Taurus. It makes us think of the Ouroboros, and that's quite important. There are there are a lot of wheels in Western esoteric thought. So let's have a look at one example, actually 2 examples. So this is a book on the collected writings, some of the collected writings of Ramon Llull, the Catalan mystic of the late 11th century, who produced an enormous volume of texts, including what's known as the Ars Brevis and the Ars Magna. And this is a combinatorial mysticism. And what he does is he takes the nine Latin letters, and actually there's 10 here because A is the 10th. A is in the center, and then it's starting with B, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and K. All right. Yeah, and you can see that they've been assigned. Essentially potencies. And he will combine all these letters with each other, and he will create ever-increasing wheels. And this had a huge influence on Agrippa and on Giordano Bruno and all of the Renaissance mystics, and as well as he had a massive influence on on computer science. He's really considered the great grandfather of computer science because of his combinatorial art of memory. And if you think about it, a computer is just a technological combinatorial memory system. So as produced by Turing and Babbage and Boole, and there's been a process whereby these what were once memory devices, combinatorial internal cyclical logics, not now they're ternary logics, the threefold logics, rather than Aristotelian logic, which excludes that middle point and sort of drives a dynamism of 2 points around an excluded middle. Well, this is an interwoven threefold logic, and that's really almost the difference between the justice and the wheel. Is one of the points in justice has been immobilized and the others spin around it. Whereas with the wheel, you have a full braiding. You have three energies that have a braided vector. So it's in full dynamism, and it does something more than prove propositions. It instantiates worlds, and it exploits, if you will, the imagination's ability to, when hosted upon a kind of a mathematical armature chassis, it produces consistent worlds. The mathematical chassis gives the foundation that the imagination then populates with associations. And you can see that we're obviously doing this in metamagic. We're using magic squares, we're using combinatorial methods. We're building, in some ways, a post-technological computer, a mnemotechnic, an orally transmittable computer made of language. And this tradition goes back a long time. It goes all the way back to the late Middle Ages. He was Dr. Illuminatus. Raman Lull was a contemporary of Abraham Abu Rafi'a, was a great innovator of the Kabbalah and developer, I believe. I'm just showing you a bunch of these different examples of the different wheels and the matrices by which he calculates the different combinatoria. We don't have enough time to really talk about what he does with it. He generates questions and answers. He used it as a rhetorical method of converting non-Christian people to Christianity. He was unusual because he was a Catholic in the 12th century. He was absolutely fluent in Arabic. And so he read Arabic, he disputed in Arabic, he was out to convert the Muslims to Catholicism. And he very interesting, very outrageous individual. So look him up, Raman Lull. But the point is he put everything through these combinatorial permutations, as did Abu Rafi'a. And what does this do? It takes a basic set of elements, say the 22 Hebrew letters, and by expanding their domain by permuting them and by exploring exhaustively every single permutation, he called them Raman Lull called these camerai. So that means chamber. So, for example, you get this threefold wheel. It can be set to any combination. He didn't like repeats. So technically, if you could include things like, say I, or B, you'd have 729 permutations, which is interesting because that's 9 to the third, and there is a Chinese system called the Tai Swan Ching that works with 729 elements. But he reduced them by saying there's no repeats. But each one of these combinations produces a camera or a chamber. And within these chambers, there can be either vices or virtues. So a chaotic form or an ordered form. And the point of creating these chambers is so that you could devict, meaning to basically, deviction is this word that he used for expelling the vice out of one of these chambers and replacing it with a virtue. So it's really this kind of exhaustive mathematical self-cultivation routine regimen where he's exploring every possible angle of this apparatus, these basic elements and their complex interaction, and in meditation richly cultivating an understanding of how these chambers, what they apply to, how they can be transformed, and you can imagine in conversation he would be able to move things to very specific destinations. So moving energies to specific destinations through rhetoric. It's a very powerful tool. The Ars Magna, the great art of Raman Lull. It's a wheel. Boy, howdy, is it ever a wheel. It's always expanding out radially. And I mentioned Abu Lafia. Abu Lafia also had a wheel. And within the Kabbalistic system, there is this book, by the way. It's absolutely fantastic. Arya Kaplan is brilliant. This book is richer than almost any book I've read on the subject of Kabbalah. It's wild. It's very excellent. And in it, we see a system called the 231 Gates, which is 22 points and all their non-repeating combinations. So there are 231 combinations of 2 Hebrew letters without reversal or repeat. So this is the 231 Gates of Wisdom, which means there's 231 compound loci, if you will, or camerae, if you will, that a highly advanced Kabbalist will have access to, storehouses of wisdom, and we can access these with the tarot, because of course we can recognize that each path, actually there's 21 gates inside of each. So within the wheel, we can see that there are which interestingly enough is the 21st path of the of the Tree of Life, right, using the key scale, but that's neither here nor there. But we can imagine there's actually doorways to all the other paths, and there's a doorway to Ta, for example. So that would be the doorway from Kaf to Tau, and of course it's the same doorway as from Tau to Kaf. So there are secret passages by means of this combinatorial wheel system that give us an extraordinary range and amplification and extension of our knowledge, which is why we need to learn how to hold the center, because especially as we're going on further into the course, this stuff just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. Orders of magnitude. There's at least one more shift in orders of magnitude on the horizon, but we have to be prepared for it. And the Wheel of Fortune is where we start to feel that momentum building up. So breathe, find the axis, focus on that, being able to hold. If you want to use Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas as a mantra to hold, if you're feeling too much current, you can use that as a mantra, because it means to hold, and it will help you brace and stabilize. at all else fails, use Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas. And you will, it means something like the plower of the field controls the work. Maybe. We don't really know what it means. But it doesn't matter. The Tenet cross will let you brace when you're experiencing extreme influxes of energy. Okay, so wow. So we're talking about the 231 gates, which, by the way, is also an octahedral number. It's an order 7 octahedron. So 1 over 4 over 9 over 15 over 25, I don't know, whatever those squares are, is an order. It's an order 7. Yeah, the central square would be 49 units, and 49, 36, 25, 9, 4, and 1, I believe. And then inverse on the bottom, so it goes up and down like a diamond. It's an octahedron. It's got a total of 231 units in it. Oh, and it has 28 units on each side. So remember when we talked about the when we talked about the course as being shaped like an octahedron with 28 lamps? Well, this is the 231 gates of wisdom assembled as an octahedron. So there you go. I hadn't planned to tell you that today, but now you have it. So yeah, the whole course essentially is coded into the faces of this composite crystalline hyperobject, I guess you could call it. 231 gates of wisdom. Also a wheel. So I trust for having fun now. So this is getting pretty wild. Let's make it wilder. We talked about the phrase Taro Ator Rota Orat. And if we didn't, we're going to now. Thought I had it. There we go. So here we can see it's a magic square, but if you take Taro Ator Rota Orat, Ator Taro Orat Rota, Rota Orat Taro Ator, and Orat Rota Ator Taro, and you stack them in that order, then you will get a cube where the symmetries run in all directions, forward, backwards, and up and down. So it's an extraordinary composition of energies in a cubic form. Why did I put them in the cross like this? So this is air, fire, water, earth, and I'm going to say east, south, west, north, because this is the arrangement of the watchtowers, as it is with the pentagram here. So I've placed these where I might place the tablets of the Enochian watchtowers, just to add another little layer for you. But one thing we can do is to do a kind of a circle ritual, a pentagram ritual, if you will. You imagine the pentagrams. I usually say Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas to conjure up the pentagram. Why do I say that? Because it's a 25 unit square, and there is, without going into too much detail, there is a magic torus. There is a magic torus that, in 25 units, incidentally, that's Ogum. So you can take a screenshot of this and explore this bad boy. Call this the Ogum Star. This is a, we'll talk about this. This is outside the scope of of the course, but it's one of the components of what I'm sure you're beginning to realize is a very layered and integrated virtual meta object or memory palace. One of the layers is this torus that brings the numbers 1 to 25 into 5 pentagrams around a torus that each outer ring, they total 65, and each cross section totals 65. It's got all sorts of interesting mathematical properties, and it can be used to generate magic squares. And it brilliantly organizes the Ogum. And there's all sorts of things that can be discovered by exploring the Ogum star. But why do I use Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas? Because this formula also has 25 units. So the one can be yoked to the other. So we can imagine that, in a sense, the Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas, once we've created associative charges, we are linking it. We're not collapsing them. This is not what we're doing, but we're kind of yoking the two. So I'm bringing the energy of this whole other supportive system. And Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas does not have to be written as a square. It can also be written as pentagram. We'll get to this. I'm going to show you this shortly. But basically, Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas can produce pentagrams, and it can produce 5 at once, which is why I kind of use it conveniently to emanate them all. Or, of course, you could go with Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas in 4 directions and then in the center. So these are all ways of fortifying the circle, of adding layers, of compounding. So one thing you could do is, in a pentagram ritual, is to imagine you're in the circle, and imagine there are 4 streams running out from the center. You're breathing in from above and below, and they're going out in these 4 streams, which are the 4 points of the tenet cross. They're flowing out through them like rivers and passing out through the center of 4 pentagrams. So there's a Sator Arepo Tenet Opera Rotas square in the center, and then there are 4 more as pentagrams in the 4 directions. And so one thing you could do is, say, facing, let me get this schematic out. Where did I put it? So using the same, this is the trouble of writing on both sides of the pages, we get weird. Well, at any rate, okay, so I'll do it from memory. Oh, there it is. So using this, right, so air is going to be east, so facing east, imagining this energy is coming in from above and below into this octahedron, and then passing out towards the east, and as you vibrate, Taro, Ator, Rota, Orat, and you can even imagine this produces a cube on the outside of the pentagram, if you like. And then you would turn around to the south, Ator, Taro, Orat, Rota. Actually, it wouldn't produce a cube, would it? It would produce a square. So you produce a square. And then the second square to the south, and then to the west, Taro, Ator, the west, Rota, Orat, Taro, Ator, and then finally to the north, Orat, Rota, Ator, Taro. And you have now created this cube, and you can see these squares outside of the pentagrams forming basically the faces of a cube, and you can see them consolidate. Remember that the octahedron has a cube within it, and a cube has an octahedron within it because they're dual objects. So then you could draw those 4 squares into the octahedron as its central object. So you now have this incredibly fortified energetic space. Just as the octahedron can be used to map the trumps, the 22 trumps, the cube can as well. And actually, it's out of the Sefer Yetzirah that we get this thing called the cube of space. So Taro Ator Rota Orat is a way of creating the cube of space. And it makes me think of the Viking sunstone for some reason. I always thought that that was a cube. And they would use it to navigate, and because you could catch the angle of the rays of the light even if it was a cloudy day. So when I get this vision, when I assemble this this tarot cube in the center of my circle, it is a sunstone that I see. Okay, so are we having fun yet? Okay, let's do more. Oh, I'll just notice that you notice how this is rotating the letters. This is just permuting and rotating the letters. This is all wheel work. The wheel of words, the wheel of logos, permutation. Abulafia's forte, as with Raman Lowell's. Taro, Ator, Rota, Orat. How do you spell it in Hebrew? There's different ways. Probably the most obvious way would be Tet, Aleph, Resh, Ayin, which we can explore, but I'm not spelling it that way. I'm actually spelling it Tet, Aleph, Resh, Vav. Why am I doing that? Tet, Aleph, Resh, Vav. Because Gematria. Tet, Aleph, Resh, Vav has the total of 216. 216 is an excellent number because it is 6 times 6 times 6. Therefore, it is a 6-fold cube. Have you ever played with those magnet toys that came in a cube? They were 6 by 6 by 6. 6 by 6 by 6 is 72 times 3. So it is actually the number of letters in the Shem HaMepharash, the word of extension. So we've talked about the Shem HaMepharash before. This is a very obvious case of a wheel. So we have this lovely deck that some of you guys bought. I really like it. It just gives me nice little imagery for these combinations of letters. Remember, this is taken from the Book of Exodus, the passages where they're crossing the Red Sea. But so Taro then, using this formula, gives us a link to the Shem HaMepharash. So we can now imagine this little 4-fold cube inside of a 6-fold cube. We now extend. We can jump that up. If you've ever put a cube inside of a cube, if you know what a tesseract looks like, imagine a 4-fold cube inside of a 6-fold cube. There we have a little tesseract, a hypercube. So, a little hyperdimensional science there for you. Okay. That is not all, my friends. While we're on the subject of extending and of wheels, there is... I don't know if I have it on hand. So let's talk a bit more about the Shem HaMepharash. There's 216 letters in the Shem HaMepharash proper, but if you add the god names Yah or Al to the end of these 3-letter names, you produce the 72 angels. The 72 angels have a total of 360 letters in them, which means that the expanded name that includes the angels is actually a 360-degree circle, which gives us 360 loci, meaning seats of imagery, places, camera. Certainly that is very handy in astrology, but where did I put? It's not on hand. But we can use that kind of stuff too, because what we're looking to do is create simple and integrated yet potentially voluminous memory spaces. And a very good example is the Sabian symbols. So I don't have my Sabian symbols book at my fingertips because I forgot about it. But the Sabian symbols are very interesting. They were channeled. So there was a man named Dr. Jones, Mark Jones, I believe, and he was a magician, and he was working with a woman who was a seer, and he made a bunch of cards with all the degrees of the zodiac on them, and 30 cards for each zodiac. So that's a total of 360 cards, and he shuffled them all up, and they then would hand her a card at random, and they were channeling some entities, I believe they were saying from Babylon and so on. But anyway, she was getting these crystal clear images. So they got 360 images, which only after did they assemble them into a full circle. So they've got a 360 degree spread. So each of the letters of the Shemhav Mefresh has an image in it. And some of the images, there are things like a woman coming up from a seal coming up from the sea, or a man in silhouette, or a crossroads, and some of them are racist, right? Some of them, betray, the attitudes of early 20th century white people in America, and so on. But the point is that they scribed all 360 degrees of the circle. That's a heck of a wheel. If that's something that you have in your working depository of loci in your consciousness, you're drawing you have a lot of options. Certainly with astrology, right? Because then, if something's in the third degree of Aries, you actually have a image for it as well. You have and a metaphor and an idea and a whole concept. So what we're really doing is we're storing erudite philosophical information in these invisible inner houses, and that's a fascinating example of 360. There's another set called the Chandra symbols, which I believe built on that. But 360 letters in the Shemhav Mefresh. Shin, which starts Shemhav Mefresh and finishes it, is worth 300. And it's got these 3 yods, right, supported by a kind of it's basically like a triple menorah, if you will. The word Shin, spelt out in full, it totals 360. But the Shin itself suggests 3 forces. And again, we're talking about the braiding of 3 forces. And we could talk about Aleph, Mem, and Shin, or we can just talk about the Shin itself. A triple force set into motion as a dynamic weave. And so the Shemhav Mefresh could be seen as divisible into 3 groups of 120, if you wanted. So that's the whole wheel divided into thirds. And then in that case you have, again, this idea of 3 forces driving the wheel. In the West, I think we would talk about sulfur, mercury, and salt, so force and form and communication as these 3 alchemical properties. But I know the gunas in Indian philosophy are similar. So it's this triple force that spins the wheel. Okay. Oh, I'm just going to backtrack a bit. I didn't mention the Ogam. This is an example of a wheel. This is Fion's window, or more properly, I think, roof beam. And this is the Ogam alphabet. Actually, it should be like this. The 4 Acmes and the 4 Theta, which are the extra letters. The 5 extra letters, they were added later. but the core of it is these 4 groups. You can see these as the fingers as well as the toes. So it's a vigidecimal system, which is quite interesting. The Maya also had a vigidecimal system, but this is a wheel of knowledge. The crane bag is sometimes called as well, because the associations of each of these can be trees or birds or metals or planets or vowels. Any number of things can be assigned to the Ogham letter. So it's a complete Celtic mnemotechnic system. So it's also a wheel. And when I showed that the Ogham star converts it into a torus, I was doing a bit of foreshadowing, because that torus, that Ogham torus, is one of several layers of, I guess, what I could call a stratified toroidal topology. So in a way, really, the metamagic system is like a Ouroboros that never stops eating its own tail. So it's just layer after, if you cut a cross section of it, you just see layer after layer after layer after layer of it. And remember, we walked the labyrinth and it's a torus, so that's on one layer. So the Ogham is on another layer. And so it's the skins of this Ouroboros that contain loci with all of these kind of associations on them. There are, if you remember, no, there are. I'm just trying to the samples. There are layers with Enochian on it, for example, that has been ascribed to the surface of a torus. And in a moment, I'm going to show you. I think now is probably the time to do it. Yeah, I'm going to show you. I'll show you this. So this is a pentacle, and this is a synthesis of. It's obviously a wheel. I drew it freehand. I didn't use a compass. I do that. I like to think of it as slack precision. Right, so what is in all this? You'll see at the very middle is that pentagram. That does actually say Sator Repotenet Opera Rotas. So that's that as a pentagram as well as a square. So this is the recipe that I just described to you of creating the 4 directional pentagrams. This has Taro Ator Rota Orat in these 4 squares. And all around the outside, starting in Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. All around the outside is the complete Shem HaMephorash with the Al and Yah endings. So the 72 names of God. But there is another, there's a couple more things. This, all right. Are we at this point yet? Okay. Before we get to where I'm going to go with this, is the Shem HaMephorash. So you know what it is. It's the 72-fold name of God. One thing we haven't really mentioned yet is another book that I have placed elsewhere. Oh, I know it's in my grimoire shelf. So the Lemegeton, and particularly the spirits of the Goetia, the 72 demon kings with their assembled legions, thousands and thousands and thousands of swarming demons, under 72 headings, which are, according to the Solomonic tradition, to be controlled or yoked by the working of the magician, who, after fortifying their circle, imprisons them in a triangle. Around the triangle are several names, 3 of which are Primumaton, Anaphaxaton, and Tetragrammaton. So these words are written. You can see them here. This is, by the way, a pentacle for assembling these beings. Again, this is not getting favors from demons. This is remediation. This is tikkun. This is about healing deep trauma, not just in the self, but in the global unconscious. So that's really what this this pentacle is about, or the seal, as it were. So Primumatan, Anafexaton, and Tetragrammaton. Now, people ask, well, what does that mean? Tetragrammaton means four-letter word. So here it's in Latin actually being used as a word of power. It's kind of as if I said, word of power as a word of power, right? It's weird. It's, when people say don't take the Lord's name in vain, and you say, God, and they're like, hey, that's blasphemy. Well, no, that's not his name. That's his species, if you will. The Lord's name is the Tetragrammaton, and in vain, of course, don't use it worthlessly. It has a profound. It has a profound position in the ontic horizon. It's at a place of the emergence of subtle realities that it's incredibly beautiful, and I think it's benevolent, but it's the using of it in vain that creates these kinds of authoritarianisms and so forth. But so Tetragrammaton is not the Tetragrammaton. So that suggests that Primumatan is not the Primumatan, and Anaphexaton is not, or Anaphexaton is not the Anaphexaton. So what are they? We want to know, because that's the key. It's not these words. It's not these Latin words. It's these words. What are they? And so Tetragrammaton is Yod He Vav He. It could be said that Primumatan is Aleph He Yud He, or Ahie. I am. And Anaphexaton, probably most people will say something like Adonai, which means Lord. And that would make sense. That's four tetragrammic words, very powerful. With those, you could corral the hordes of the howling into some kind of a manageable form. This is something that was passed on to me, and that I've worked with for many years. I said quite a bit, I guess. I've mentioned Mithras before. Richard, who introduced the twin star and some other things, and there's maybe two or three, the proximity principle, and the third thing I took from him, really, there was really three gifts that he gave me, and the third was the concept of banners of the name. So there are permutations of the name Yahweh. There's 12 of them, or 24 if you allow for the finals. So how does that work? So if you take the four-letter name of God, you can rotate it into 24 permutations. 12 permutations, recognizing the Heys are interchangeable. If the Heys are not interchangeable, if there is a flagged final Hey, then what you get is 24 permutations. And one of the things that I discovered is that we can use this fourfold square methodology to organize them very simply. So here we have 24 permutations of the Tetragrammaton, and they're organized, you'll notice, into 6 groups. So this one, I flagged the final he with a dot, and this square is exactly the same as this square, except that the dots are counterchanged. And now, so you have so this is a pair, and then this is a group. Again, they're identical, and then so there's basically 3 permutation groups following this logic. So 6 squares in total, with 4 in each square, for a total of 24 names of God. Okay, so so this is interesting. You might have been wondering, just casually, whatever happened to Ahiyahweh? Why am I vibrating Ahiyahweh to the points of the octahedron? So there are Ahiyahweh is of course six letters, and it totals 32. And I usually vibrate to the 6 points of the octahedron, or the 6 faces of the cube. But Ahiyahweh is interesting. This is something that Mithras essentially discovered, and I've never seen it anywhere else, is that everybody knows Ahiyahweh is Ahiyah and Yahweh placed together, interwoven. And they're two different tetragrammatons, each with 2 heys, which is very good. So they each have 3 letters, and 2 of them are doubled hey. So already Tetragrammaton and Premiummaton, right? Ahiyah and Yahweh. That makes sense. So Ahiyahweh. So is Anaphexiton Adonai, or is it another word? So it would seem that in the formula Ahiyahweh, there is a natural candidate for a 3rd word, and that is Aleph He Vah He. So you have Aleph He Yud He, Yud He Vah He, and Aleph He Vah He. So Ahiyah, Yahweh, and Ahu. Ahiyah is 21, Yahweh is 26, and Ahu is 27. So, why is this significant? Because if you permute these, you can see, following the example I gave you with the Tetragrammaton, that there are 24 of each. There's 24, so there are 24 squares, 6 squares of each, 24 words in total. 24 plus 24 plus 24 is 72. So there are 72 names of God that come in 3 great streams out of the word Ahiyahweh. And so I have shown them here in these squares. Join my course if you want to learn more. if you're watching this, man, if you're watching this and you're an hour and 15 minutes in and you're not in my course, then what are you doing? Awesome, it's good. It's good you're watching this, but there's a lot more. And just to know this doesn't do anything. That's the theory, right? This has to become an energetic practice. So it is. This is, I'll admit it, very advanced, and I don't actually expect you guys to immediately pick this up. But I'm putting it on the table now because it's an incredibly important piece of information. It is a solution to the problem of these 3 names, and it's the most elegant solution to the idea of tetragrammata that I've ever seen. So it's a triple tetragrammata. Ahiyahweh, which totals 32, gives it to us, so as a result, meditation on the word Ahiyahweh in itself
begins to empower us. You can see it in a 6-pointed star. It begins to empower us to corral these wild energies into, as it turns out, a Taurus. Because, yes, there's more. There is a story. Oh, I'm just going to show you here. This says Ahioe, right? Aleph, Hey. And I actually have done this. Aleph, Hey. I think I do it. Aleph, Hey, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. To trace Aleph, Hey, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. To trace a unicursal hexagram across the face of the pentacle. We see the unicursal hexagram, of course, in this version of the wheel as well. That's Leonora Carrington's. All right, I'm not done yet. Okay, so at this point, we should talk about the brass vessel. The brass vessel was a vessel sealed with the Shem HaMephorash, into which the demons were seen as being contained. In other words, a synthesis of all the wild energies. So there's also a story of a ring of virtues. One of the demons, Asmodee, is said to, once properly confronted by an empowered magus, to deliver the ring of virtues. So here is another beautiful little example of a magic object. This, although it looks like a Z, you can tell I'm Canadian, can't you? It looks like a Z. This is a magic torus. C connects to C, B connects to B, D connects to D, E connects to E. I don't expect you to work this all out from from me showing it to you on video, but the numbers 1 to 72 are inputted into the faces of this. If you want to get this, this is in my favorite book on math, on Rec Math. Where are we? Yes, here it is. Cliff Pickover's Zen of Magic, Squares, Circles, and Stars. This this magical torus is in there, and the numbers 1 to 72 are arranged such that every one of these hexagons, as well as the stellations or the hexagrams around them, total 73. Sorry, I lied. 219, which is the sum total, which is 3 times 73. 73 is, of course, the spirits of the Goetia plus a central point. This idea of the 73 is a star number with 37 in the middle. We can go on and on and on about it. There are in other traditions, there is 73 spirits, and in, I might as well show you, yeah, in the tradition of the Sigillum Dei, the seal of God, which is a medieval tradition which eventually led to the Sigillum Dei Emeth, which D used as his central glyph of synthesis. Well, this earlier version of it, this prototype, if you will, has 72 letters around the outer rim, which are a Shem HaMephorash, 72 letter name of God. This is not the Hebrew version. This is a different version, but it actually starts at a cross at the top, which is not part of the Shem HaMephorash. So there is 73 units around this. And there is a 73rd spirit of the Goetia, mentioned in some texts, and there's some nuances to the numberings here. The magic numeration works almost without exception, but there is one place where a certain bit of jiggery-pokery needs to happen. Which is this overlap between the first, essentially, right here, this very first hexagram and the middle hexagram. And this is complex. I'm not going to go into this. But this is a torus. It's a ring. And what it suggests is that the 72 names of God, or 73 if you like, are assemblable into a three-dimensional toroidal space, a ring of virtues, if you will. So meditation upon them can produce this. Of course, here are the 72 seals of the demons, which are essentially being assembled within this this toroidal accelerator, if you want to call it. Ahiawe. Ahiawe, with time and practice, will gain enough momentum to be able to enforce these structures. I don't expect you to summon this up and do this, but I'm putting this out there as basically part of the work. We can also take the twin star, and we can use the twin star to encode these facets as well. So we can actually get very familiar and very deep and very integrated with this toroidal architecture. And remember, when we walked the labyrinth, I taught you how to visualize it as a torus. So here's the thing. This is the stratified Ouroboros. You've got this layer with the Shemha Mefarash on it that has the Goetia within it and the angels without it, and then we have the Ogum star enwrapping the whole thing, planting forests and frolicking creatures and energy lines, and then we have the labyrinth weaving around it, and there are more and more and more and more ways to begin to see things assigned to this particular topos. This is a complex and extremely powerful meditative focus. And so I offer it to you on this path to bring it to your awareness as in a sense the next step, the next turning of the wheel. And before we finish, there's one last thing I want to talk about. This is fractal wheel extrusion. So let's say we have a torus. This is a torus. Let's just imagine that this torus is the donut hole in the middle is opened up, so it's really actually quite thin. So just imagine here's the torus. Okay, here's the torus. Now what if then we took this torus, which is basically a circle, and we went all the way around like this? Then have we not produced a torus out of this torus? And this next torus, can we not collapse it and produce a torus out of the torus? And then collapse it and produce a torus out of the torus? So this is fractal toroidal extrusion. But what's interesting is there is a shift, an orthogonal shift. And that's what I want to really draw your attention to, because the wheel as portal, as gate, involves a turn 90 degrees. We're going new through the tarot, and all of a sudden we're going to just hook a turn into a dimension adjacent to the three that we are aware of. We're going through the third dimensions, and now we're just suddenly stepping out of it to the side. That's what's going on here. And that's what's going on here. Look at this. Here we have Aleister Crowley's brilliant image of the spinning wheel. You see the sun in the triangle. He's got 10 spokes. But look at this. There is a flat plane with a magic circle drawn in it. So just so much you can imagine this sweeping up and around and crossing, kissing through that point. And then, of course, that can sweep around and so on. This is the lateral dimensional step. And guess what? This path which leads from Chesed to Netzach, and which is connected to Kaf, the palm of the hand, and Jupiter, is about a orthogonal, extra-dimensional step. We have, in a sense, gone all the way into the center of the tarot, and now we're stepping through it. And now the wheel is rearticulating itself it's rearticulating itself. The wheel has been like this. Well, now we're just one cross section of it. The wheel is rearticulating itself in a dimension that we didn't really know about until now. So welcome to the next level. And with that, I would say the spinning of the wheel is affected. And I will thank you for taking the time to sit with me and discuss these matters. My name is Dr. Peter Duchemin. This is the Forest of Life Venus calendar and the 22nd week, the Wheel of Fortune. So I will see you next time.